Hello, everyone, and welcome to. I'm gonna go with the writer's class. I feel like we're gonna learn a lot about writing. I lied. I know darn well we're not. It's gonna be an end I thought podcast. Because I have four of them. And yes, that means I get to brag about having four lovely podcasts. And since I recognized during my last podcast, I should probably name them. I've been doing this for almost a decade now, and naming them has never come to my mind. Like, remember about 2 years ago, I decided that I should name the podcast actually what it's named. Yeah, because it would be named "And I Thought," and I'd be like, "Welcome to the Women's Cave." And people are like, "I can't find it." And I'm like, "I don't know what's wrong with them." And then I recognize if you have a podcast name "And I Thought," you should say the podcast name is "And I Thought." So there you go. So we have "And I Thought," Lady Sale Podcast, Meet Hollywood Mondays, and the Writer's Class. Now, if you really want to get fun and jiggy with it, ooh, wait, that's way back. I need to stop watching old Will Smith stuff. If you really want to get jiggy with it, you can listen to the author reality show, which, four authors actually went and competed for a traditional publishing contract. And we have four CEOs of publishing houses as judges. That was fun. You did not care about that, but I felt like I needed to brag, so you had to hear it. Ha ha. I will know that half of the end I thought, ladies, and high five to me for remembering to introduce myself with a little dance. With a little dance. Oh, no, that looked like I was punching myself in the right and the left cheek at the same time. Lord have mercy. And I wrote books. Go figure. An author who writes books. There's "And I Thought Divorce Was Bad," "And I Thought Being Grown Up Was Easy," "If Only I Remember in Verse," "Foreign Coffees," "Widow's Web," and "Widow's Debt." And if you're counting, that's 6 books. And if you've been here for a while, we got a few more. So you can get the rest of the 17 books. Because we obviously have nothing else to do with our life but to write books. At www.andithoughladies.com. But you know what? You're not here to hear about me, which is sad. Because you needed to hear another what in here. About 4 or 5 of them. We should equal 7 total, but today we're not going to make that count. You're here to hear about our wonderful guests. Wonderful guests, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would, but before I do, I want to say I'm just tired thinking about all the things that you do. You are amazing. But she told me to introduce myself. So my name is Vivian King. I am an author and I am a communications consultant. I'm a former television journalist and just an individual who loves life. And because I had a stroke in 2013, I love life even more because I survived that. And so I know we'll be talking about that later on. This is the book that I wrote after that. It's called When the Words Suddenly Stopped, Finding My Voice Again After a Massive Stroke. And because I found that voice, I can sit here and talk to you today. So thank
With
you.
the same, oh, I'm sorry, with the exact same cadence as a journalist. I'm jealous. I am very jealous. I have not had a stroke, and I'm like, I can't do that.
That is nothing but the Lord. God was with me, and I was grateful before, but I'm even more grateful now.
Oh my goodness, I can't imagine how grateful. Now I heard about though, I should be talking about the book thing, but this is me. I tend to go every which way, but I
Hey,
promise I
that's
will get to this
fine.
book. I heard former journalists.
Yeah, yeah.
How did that happen? And did that come from the communications consultant, or is the communications consultant after the former journalist?
The communications consultant is after the former journalist. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and I ended up deciding to go to the University of Missouri Columbia to study journalism. So I have a Bachelor of Journalism from the University of Missouri Columbia, and I worked in television in different markets. I was started off small in Alexandria, Louisiana. Then I went to Tyler, Texas. Then I went to Battle Creek, Michigan, and then I ended up in Milwaukee and was hired as the education reporter at WTMJ TV, the NBC affiliate, and later on ended up anchoring the midday show, the morning show, having my own segment, developing it called Viv's View. And I just had a great time for about 10 and a half years at Channel 4, but several years before that, I worked in smaller markets. So it was a very fun career, but things change. So I ended up doing work at a grocery chain. I was the director of public affairs, and then I ended up being vice president of community relations at a healthcare system here in Milwaukee. And then I had my stroke. And then I decided after that to write the book. And that's how I ended up becoming an author and then a communications consultant.
This is how you can tell that she's a journalist. She made it round. She made it come on back around by itself. She did her own segue.
I have produced many shows in
Yes,
segments.
she did her own segue. So now I'm back to the book where, I wasn't trying to go in the first place. Oh my goodness. So going from the more of an oral and visual medium and then going into PR and now into writing, did any of those skills help you as you sat down to write the book?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, the thing that I learned about journalism, especially when I left television, is that I had transferable skills. And I got to tell you that little story because I was walking with some friends, we regularly walk, getting some exercise in, many years ago in 2005. And one of them said, "Oh, I've recommended you for a job at this grocery chain." And I said, "Oh, that's great, but I just got this new show. I'm having a great time, blah, blah, blah." Right. And she says, "Okay, well, I told them if they hired you that you should be a VP." And I said, "You need to be my agent," and just kind of laughed it off. Well, a week later, this woman called me and said that she was a consultant with this grocery chain and that the CEO wanted to meet with me. Fast forward to me talking to a friend who at the time worked at an executive search firm. And I called him and I said, "This CEO wants to meet with me. What do I say?" And he gave me some advice that I give everybody when I do speeches, etc. He said, Look at your resume and write a one-page Vivian King story. And you're not going to memorize it, but you read that over and over, and it will just become conversational and you'll be able to tell your story." And so I said, "Well, I can write a story. I write stories every day." So I wrote this one-page story and I went to this interview. And it was funny because the CEO, was asking me about, myself and what I did. And I was, excited because I had just gotten this promotion, blah, blah, blah. And, it was, I was really excited. And he kind of had this look, when you interview people, when you're boring them or, when something has changed. And he kind of looked like, "So why are you here?" And so I saw that little look like, "Why am I even talking to you?" And I said, "So you're probably wondering why I'm here." And I said, "It's because I'm a faithful person and you never know from which direction your next blessing will be. And so I felt that I owed it to myself to find out what you had to offer." And so then he smiled and then he said, "Well, this is what I need." And he said something that I now call a buzzword because they were words that I had used in the story that I wrote about myself. And at that moment, I said, "I'm going to get this job because I could just talk about it extemporaneously with no problem." We talked for an hour and a half and I ended up getting the job. So it was great.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely insanely amazing and wonderful. Mwah! Oh my goodness.
So
I
I
am
tell
so grateful.
everybody that because it's like we all have a story, write our story and be able to talk about it easily.
Exactly. And that does make it more conversational. I'm not gonna lie. I just thought about it while you were sitting here and I was like, I need to do that so I can be like, flexible in what I'm doing and saying and not just like, let me list my accomplishments.
Exactly, exactly. You can say how you write about how this related to this and I learned this and you can see that all the skills that you have are transferable. And so my journalism skills definitely helped me in being a public relations practitioner, in community relations, and definitely in writing my book.
So this brings me to the subject, the tongue get ready. Okay, sorry. So this brings me to the question I have to ask all my guests. What are the three top pieces of advice you would give someone who's going to write a debut novel?
That is that's a good question. I would say, have a clear idea of what you want to write about and make sure you know why you are writing about it and what impact it will have. Because, I could sit down and write everything that's happened in my life, but how does it impact the reader? I wrote my book because people didn't know about the link between birth control pills over the age of 40 and blood clots that cause stroke. And so, because too many people didn't know about it, I wanted to write about my story and tell them about that. So, have a clear idea of why you want to write the story. Secondly, I would say uh, trust the process and the timing. Uh, because so many times authors, including myself, have a timeline, which yeah, a timeline is good. I'm not saying don't have a timeline, but we can say, I want to have this done by this, and this done by this date, and this done by this date. I want to publish at this time. And that's an outline, right? That's an outline and for your book. But as things change. I remember that I was sending out to beta readers and thinking, okay, I'm going to get it back at this time and launch by this date. And when I got my beta readers to return their information, they had some questions for me, and it made me have to write two additional chapters. And I didn't feel like it at first because I hadn't thought about that. And so it took me a month to even start writing those two chapters. But because I had to do that, and of course, it delayed everything, but it made the book much better. And so trust the timing. And then just realize that your story matters to somebody. It could be somebody who had another stroke, but your audience may not be my audience. You're writing your book for somebody, and just realize that your audience is out there and think about who that audience might be.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you for that.
You're
Because you think about how many books are already on the subject, and everyone's like, oh, bring something new. You know
welcome.
what's new? You. You're
Exactly.
the new
Absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely.
And you're gonna see it completely different from somebody else.
Hmm.
That's the oh my goodness. I just want to say the birth control thing. You do recognize that when they give you birth control pills, they do tell you that there is a chance of stroke even before 40. There's a chance of people who have issues with their heart, they cannot take birth control. There's
Yeah,
a chance of people with blood vessel issues, they cannot take birth control. It does a number on the body.
it does. But when I tell you,
But if you need them, please take them.
right, when I tell you though that, because I you know, was first of all, doctor said I was relatively young to have a stroke. And of course, that's
Mhm.
relative. Um, and I did not think I had history of stroke in my family. I was relatively active. I had never really had a health issue. So people were surprised that I had a stroke. And so, of course, once I survived and got back to work, everybody says, what caused it? What caused it? And I tell them that. And when I say, half the women said, oh, yeah, my doctor told me that in my mid 30s and took me off birth control pills and said I was too young to have a stroke. But the other half were like me, and they looked at me wide eyed and said, what? I'm over 40 and still taking birth control pills. And I didn't know that. So, because there was such a wide disparity, I was like, okay, I need to tell my story. And, I should have known that, because, it's in the fine print, but I was like, like, I didn't read the fine print. I had been on it before, and somehow that got kind of lost in the shuffle. So, and apparently it got lost in the shuffle for others because people are still reading my book and saying the same thing and thanking me and saying now they're having conversations with their doctors. So I'm glad I followed God's lead and wrote the book.
Most people, I don't think most people pay attention to it, but like
Yeah.
I'm gonna brag about myself. I've been studying medicine off and on since I was 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You heard me right. I said five. Um, and so like I'm always worried about heart health and strokes. That's my
Yeah.
big thing. And then I'm gonna share a little bit about myself. I do have heart issues. I've always had them. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
always worried about birth control, heart health, stroke, blood clots. Yeah. So
Yeah. And so
the
when
only reason that
somebody
I
is
knew about
not,
it, I would tell other people about it, but like at that time I was 20 some years old and they were like, yeah, I'm not dying. I mean, come on, when we're in our 20s, we're like
we're
indestructible.
not thinking about it. Right. We think we're invincible, right? And
Yes.
if we don't have somebody in our family that has, has that issue there, if there's not a reason for us to really pay attention to the doctor, we're just like, oh, I need birth control pills, and so I'm going to take them. And you're not thinking about it, especially if nothing has ever happened to you with it. So you're not thinking about that when you haven't had a health issue. So that's why I said I needed to write the book, because there were too many of us who, did not know it and did not pay attention. Maybe the doctors didn't say it. And I don't like, yeah, I don't
Actually, it's on
ever
the end.
remember.
It's on the end of the birth control commercials on television.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely on the end. I was like, "Oh, excuse no."
Right.
No, I mean, you could definitely look for a different kind and different style, and there's so much going on that you could look for. But
Right.
I don't know
Yeah.
why I'm having an issue. I'm having a chit chat about birth control.
Well, that's the
I
real
mean,
reason.
obviously it's because it goes with the book.
Yep, it goes with the book. And the thing is, not everybody reads the fine print. Not everybody, has had an issue or known about somebody. So, there that's why this information is out here. And people get information in different ways. And so if the doctor didn't say anything, and your friends haven't said anything, or your mom hasn't said anything, I hope my book lets you know, okay, this is something you need to pay attention to, because I think there are a lot of women out there just like me, single, not even, concerned about certain things, and this is for them.
I want to thank you first of all for sharing this bit of information and like in a way that you can take it in as a narrative, not as
Yeah,
someone being like, and I'm telling you, just
right,
we can take
right.
it as a narrative. Remember that we can survive this, know the signs, get help, know that you can get back to life.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because people today, who meet me and don't know my story, when they find out that I had a stroke, they are shocked. Like yesterday, my condo association had a little gathering, and my mom and I went, and somehow my book came up, and people were like, "What? You had a stroke? It doesn't seem that way." And I was like, yeah, well, it happened. So, I'm just, like I said before, grateful to God that he spared me and spared my life. And I think he did it so that I could share this information, because there were so many people who didn't realize, like I said, the link between birth control pills and blood clots and strokes.
It's very important to know. I mean, it's important to know for I think all of our meds, but all of our the side effects for all the meds are just so many to list.
I mean, yeah, you
You just
any
don't pay attention sometimes.
medication. I think there are more commercials on medication today than I remember, or either if they were out there before, I wasn't necessarily listening to them. You know what I mean? Because once I had to take warfarin, I heard all the commercials about warfarin and similar medication, and I'm like, oh, I never heard that before. It's kind of like when you get a new car and you haven't seen that car before, but as soon as you get one, you see every car like yours on the highway. I think it's the same way with, when you've had a health issue, you start to listen to different things in a different way.
Exactly. Exactly, you do. So now let's get back to like the actual ways of writing this. So when you sat down to write it, how did you organize the story?
So I first talked about, well, first of all, I wrote the first chapter, which is a short chapter, because it is from my perspective on that day. And of course, that day I get up, I rush to this Girl Scouts breakfast, and then I collapse. And so it's probably like a page and a half, right? Or maybe 2.5 pages or something like that. And after I wrote that, I said to myself, oh, well, I don't know what happened next because I was in neurological ICU for 10 days and in the hospital for a total of 32 days. So I was really out of it for 10 of those days. And so I need to know what happened. And that's when my journalistic skills came into play, because I said, okay, I need to interview the people that were around me and that helped me recover. And so I listed about 11 people, I think, and I started interviewing them. And it was interesting because then they started telling me about other people that did something that I had no idea had done. And then so I ended up interviewing 22 people which who had stories about what happened. And I remember calling this one friend and I said, I hear that you were uh, instrumental in getting somebody to the hospital for me. And I want to talk to you about it. And she said, I was waiting for your call. Now, I didn't even start to write this book until 5 years after, right? And so I was interviewing her. She had waited for 5 years for me to call and say, I want to know about this. And so, it was just that kind of organic process. So I interviewed people, I logged, then I felt like I was back at the television station. I interviewed everybody. I listened to their interviews. I logged their interviews. And as I listened and logged, then I was able to really fill in the gaps for everything. So, what one person remembered, then the other person kind of remembered it in a different way, but I could really fill in the gaps, and it really gave me the sense of what happened on that day and the 10 days after that I had lost because I was in neurological ICU. So it was really very cathartic to really learn what happened. And I think, as a journalist, you're always seeking the truth, because everybody says, did that traumatize you? And it didn't, because, like, I'm still a journalist, whether I work at a television station or not. Journalism was my first love. And so I think God revealed to me that, you know what, I want to know about what happened. And it was at a time when my heart and my mind could handle it. So I was very, very grateful that my friends were willing to help me tell this story.
That's an amazing way to do this. Now, I'm sorry. I should be wrapping up the interview right now. That is what I should be doing. And since there is no clock, running down my segment,
Mhm.
I'm not going to do it. I have more questions.
Okay. I'm here
So,
for
a
it.
mid-afternoon show, like a lifestyle show. What
Yeah.
was that like to have that? And then a second question, which is very important right now. So what was it like to have it? And then the second question is, how did you pick your guest?
Mm.
Because every author wants to get on TV for their book, so we need to know that information.
That's true. And so, this was before, of course, this was way before I was an author. But um, I had this idea, to do segments in the midday show. And so I pitched them because I was a co-anchor, and so they were looking for ideas, and I said I would like to have a show, a segment called. So it was really a segment within our midday show, and it also aired in the morning show, and it was called Viv's View, and I just pitched things that I wanted to do. So I'm a foodie, and I love restaurants and great food. And so on Monday, Viv's View did lunch. And so we would highlight, local restaurants, new ones, staples. It was really great. And so all my friends, when I left television, they were like, well, how are we going to get great tables at the restaurants? And I was like, is that all you care about? But it was really fun. We did Viv's View did lunch. Um, Tuesday, what did I do on Tuesday? I can't remember what Tuesday was. But one day was Thursday was travel Thursday because I love to travel as well. And so I have traveled all over the world and continue to travel. In fact, I just got back from Brazil in late April and early May. And so, but I've been to Africa. I've been to all but one of the continents. And so that's my last goal is to at least get to Antarctica. So so that's one thing. So Thursday was travel Thursday, and I remember we went to Quito, Ecuador. And so I wrote that trip off because I ended up doing a story on Quito, Ecuador. And so I was like, that worked out well.
That's such a cool place to travel.
It was really fun. I had the best paella there. Oh my gosh, it was so good. And then I would do when there were different celebrities coming into town, I would do like a celebrity show. So I interviewed DL Hughley. I did, a segment on during Mother's Day. One week I did celebrity moms that were connected to Milwaukee. So I ended up at the time Eric Benet's mother. Oh, Eric Benet is from Milwaukee, and so I interviewed his mom and others as well. So it was really fun. And then I just decided to do whatever I wanted to do, and so whatever I was interested in, and because I had such seniority at the station, they were like, okay, go with it. That's a great idea. And so it was really very fun. It was like towards my latter years at Channel 4, but it was like super, super fun.
Oh my goodness, that sounds absolutely amazing. Now, do you have any hints or any suggestions on how authors can make themselves presentable to morning shows or mid-afternoon lifestyle shows?
Absolutely. So when I'll tell you this. So when I launched my book, When the Words Suddenly Stopped, Finding My Voice Again After a Massive Stroke, I really looked at, okay, the first time I launched, I launched it was in March. In fact, it launched March 24th, 2020, which, if you remember, was the first week of the shutdown because of COVID. So I had to cancel all of my appearances. So I had to launch online, but I was just like, oh, like, okay, what am I going to do? So I launched online. Um, but I did a news release, to say that, former television journalist loses her voice, yada, yada, yada. So then, because I had to, that was the first time, my launch. But then May was coming up. So that gave me an opportunity to say, May is Stroke Awareness Month. So I relaunched the idea in May for Stroke Awareness Month and was able to, get on Good Morning America, which was amazing. And so what I would say is, you're gonna get probably more no's than yeses, but once you get a yes, you like milk that for all you can, right? Because I had that segment, I posted it on my social media, on my website. I can now say as seen on Good Morning America. So you can do all those things. And and you just gotta kind of leverage that calendar, like whatever your topic is. If you're writing about domestic violence, there's a month for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Look and see what naturally will come to you as far as what your topic is. And so you can usually leverage that. And then if you're the first in your, sometimes people just launch at home, right? your hometown publications or radio stations or television stations, they have segments. And so it's like, give them an idea of what your book is, but you got to have a hook. So try to find a hook that kind of gets somebody's attention.
Thank you so much for that information. I really, really appreciate that. I'm sorry. I love hearing about how to get on television because it's one of my favorite things to do is be on
Yeah,
TV.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thoroughly enjoy it. In case you, yeah, nah, I think I did enough bragging about myself this entire time. So,
We got
our
to
first
toot our
question.
own horn. Some authors don't want to do that. And so
Oh,
toot your
that's
own
never been my problem.
horn.
Can you tell?
But I'm sure many authors who are like, I don't know. And if you're not gonna toot your own horn, then other people are not gonna want to. They're
I
not
mean,
gonna know about you.
just look up. There you go, right about there. I have a whole magazine with me in it, and then over this side, there's a magazine with me in it, and then on
Yeah,
that side, there was supposed to be another one, but I haven't put it up yet. I feel like I'm doing a lot of tooting just right there in the background. Like,
and
doot,
that's a good idea.
beep,
That's
beep.
great. Absolutely.
So, can you tell us where we can find out more about you and about the book?
Absolutely. You can visit my website at vivianlking.com. Of course, that has links to me on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And it also, my homepage at the bottom of it, it connects to all of my social media, so you can connect with me there. And yeah, vivianlking.com, you can find everything out about me that you want.
Awesome. I am loving this. Thank you so much. Everyone, please go to vivianlking.com. Not only does she have a book about stroke, she has a book about for children as well. Can we see that book real quick?
Well, absolutely. I thought you never asked. So here it is. This is my first children's book. It's called Grace Welcomes the Lady Next Door, Book One in the Growing Up Polite series. And I just have a pet peeve about rude people. And you know that this country has devolved into a very rude country. I mean, I don't even really want to go into all of it. But when you have adults behaving badly, they are behaving in ways that we would not teach our kids to do. And so I thought we needed to go back to the basics. And there are several kids who may not have grown up in a family like mine, where my mom and my grandmother, they made sure that I said please and thank you, and treated people in the way that I wanted to be treated. But if you don't have people teaching you that at home, you know, and for whatever reason, I wanted to give those students something to read and learn about manners the way that I did. So if they didn't learn about it at home, they can learn about it in my book. And when I read to children, it is so wonderful. Like, they give me life. They give me life because they pick out the themes so easily. And, they pick out things that, I didn't, even sometimes think about. But, my story, teaches about manners, but it's also Grace Welcomes the Lady Next Door. It's also about moving to a new place and being a new person in a city. And, just it talks about grief because Grace has lost her mom. Her mom passed away. And so that's why they moved. And so it just really talks about a lot of different things. And I love the lessons. And so this is book one, and book two, I've already written. I'm waiting for the illustrator to send the drawings and illustrations, and hopefully it will be out later this year. And it's Grace and the Thank You Note. So
Oh my goodness. Oh, and the thank you notes. That is an art that is practically dead.
absolutely. But just think, if you're somebody who sends a handwritten thank you note, or even just to send a thank you note at all, right? People are that is a lost art.
It truly, truly is. I mean, we are the ladies, so therefore we have stacks of about 1,000 and some thank you notes because we do have to send out a lot.
Absolutely, you do. I need to write about you guys.
I
So
never suggested.
I'll be looking when I'm with you.
Oh, I don't know if we'll have ladylike behavior. There's a bar.
You can
I was like, I know everyone has said you're always a lovely lady who knows how to handle her bourbon. Thank you.
exactly. See?
Thank you kindly. One more time, tell us the website before I wrap it up for us over here.
The website is vivianlking.com, and I would welcome you coming to visit and sending me a note in the chat. So that would be great.
Awesome. Okay, you guys, I'm Winona. I'm one half of the And I Thought Ladies. You can find out everything that your ladies are doing at www.andithoughladies.com. While you're there, take a moment and go down to the bottom of the page and see the charities that we proudly support. It doesn't mean that you have to give them money in order to support them. We ask that you support them as well. Again, not money. It could be time or it could be information because we found out one place needed help with grants and turns out we knew someone and they were like, I can help with that. And I was like, hey, look at that. It's not money, it's just knowledge. So, hey, if you can't do that, then, money always works. We thank you in advance for supporting them. Remember that wisdom is all around you if you're open to finding it and accepting it. So, peace and love, you guys, from Winona and the Missing Jade. Oh, yeah. Thanks for listening.